Silence can be your most formidable weapon. Have you ever spoken only to wish you hadn't? Have you felt your words scatter like arrows shot in the dark, each one missing the mark, leaving you weaker than before? We live in a culture that worships noise, shouting matches, endless opinions, constant explanations. And yet the Stoics knew a hidden truth, that silence itself can cut deeper than any clever reply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." Epictetus reminded us to say only what is necessary and in few words. To them, silence was not retreat. It was power. It was presence. It was self-mastery. In this journey, you'll see why holding your tongue can command more respect than the loudest voice in the room, and how silence, when chosen with wisdom, becomes the sharpest tool you'll ever carry. Let's start the journey. Number 10, we speak to heal the wound or widen it. Think about the last time you spoke out of anger. Did it actually solve the problem, or did it make the cut even deeper? We like to believe that talking is the way to heal, that if we explain ourselves enough or defend ourselves hard enough, the pain will somehow disappear. But more often, the opposite happens. Words, once released, cannot be taken back. They echo, they sting, they spread, and instead of closing the wound, they tear it wider. The Stoics understood this danger. Epictetus warned, "No great thing is created suddenly." He wasn't only talking about patience in action, but also patience in speech. Because when we rush to speak, we reveal our lack of control. Think of silence as a bandage. It doesn't erase the injury, but it stops you from making it worse. It gives time for clarity, time for emotions to cool, time for reason to take the driver's seat. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That single filter could eliminate half of the pain we create for ourselves and others. The truth is, most of our wounds don't need more words. They need less. They need space. They need silence. So the next time your tongue burns with the urge to fire back, ask yourself a simple question. Will these words heal, or will they harm? And if the answer isn't clear, then the choice is stay silent. Because silence may not solve everything, but it will never betray you the way careless words can. Number 9, silence is not absence. It's deliberate presence. Most people confuse silence with emptiness. They assume that if you're not speaking, you're not participating. That if your voice isn't in the room, you've disappeared. But the Stoics knew the opposite is true. Silence is not a void. It is a force. It carries weight, authority, clarity. Think of the moments that stay with you. A teacher pausing before a difficult truth, a judge sitting in silence before delivering a sentence, a friend who listens without interrupting. That silence does not feel like absence. It feels like presence. It demands attention. It fills the room. Seneca once wrote, "Silence is a lesson in itself." And indeed, silence teaches others how to value your words. When you don't throw them around carelessly, when you hold them back until the moment matters, each word lands heavier, sharper, more unforgettable. But this raises the real question. When do we choose the weight of silence? The answer lies in discernment. Silence is powerful when emotions are high, because words spoken in heat are almost always words we regret. Silence is powerful in conflict because it shifts the pressure back onto the other person, forcing them to reveal more than they intended. And silence is powerful in wisdom, because it proves you don't need to prove yourself. Think about leaders you've admired. Were they the ones constantly talking, or the ones who spoke rarely, yet carried a presence that could quiet the entire room? That's the paradox of silence. The less you use it, the more it commands. So when you're tempted to fill the air with noise, pause. Remember that silence, when chosen deliberately, is not weakness, not passivity, not absence. It is the purest form of presence. And sometimes, the loudest statement you can ever make. Number 8. The angry voice is the enemy's tool. Anger has a sound. It's sharp, heated, desperate. The louder it grows, the weaker it becomes. And yet, when we're provoked, our first instinct is to raise our voice, to shout, to argue, to prove ourselves right. But in that very moment, we hand over control, because the angry voice is not yours anymore. It belongs to the enemy. The Stoics warned us, anger is a kind of madness. Seneca wrote entire essays on its danger, reminding us that no one has ever become stronger by shouting. They've only become exposed. Now picture this. Two people locked in conflict, voices rising, fists clenched, faces burning. But then one of them goes silent. Not out of fear, not out of surrender, but out of strength. The silence changes everything. The furious voice, once feeding on opposition, suddenly has nothing left to strike. The fire has no air, and slowly it burns out. This is the hidden strategy of silence in conflict. It doesn't mean you avoid truth. It doesn't mean you refuse to defend yourself. It means you choose when truth will matter most, and you refuse to let anger dictate that timing. Epictetus said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." But if you do not answer in anger, they cannot own you. They cannot control you. So the next time rage rises in your throat, remember, the first word you speak in anger will likely be the one you regret. But silence will always protect your dignity. Because in the end, the angry voice destroys itself, and silence outlasts every fire. Number 7. Let others talk. Reveal their weak spots. There's a reason interrogation rooms often look the same. A chair, a table, a bright light, and silence. Because silence makes people nervous. It makes them fill the air with words. And the more they speak, the more they reveal. This is one of silence's sharpest weapons. When you hold back, others feel pressured to step in. They explain too much, they confess too much, they expose the cracks in their own armor. The Stoics noticed this long before psychology gave it a name. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." He wasn't just encouraging patience, he was pointing to power. Because in silence, you collect information. You see motives more clearly. You notice what's hidden between the words. Think about it. In debate, who usually wins? Not the person who talks the most, but the one who listens, waits, and then strikes with precision. But here's the caution. This method can backfire if you misuse it. If your silence is dripping with arrogance, if it's a game of manipulation rather than presence, people will sense it and turn against you. The key is intention. Silence must serve truth, not ego. It must be grounded in patience, not pride. Used wisely, it gives you the advantage no argument ever could. It allows others to reveal their assumptions, their fears, their weak spots, without you lifting a finger. So, in your next conversation, resist the urge to rush in with answers. Let them talk, let the silence do the work. Because in the end, the one who speaks less usually knows more. Number 6. False rumors scream, Silence answers softly. Rumors travel faster than truth. They are loud, reckless, and fueled by the excitement of being passed from ear to ear. And when we hear our own name twisted into lies, our instinct is to fight back, to argue, to correct, to defend. But here's the problem. The louder you defend yourself, the more the rumor grows. Every denial sounds like confirmation. Every rebuttal spreads the slander to fresh ears. The Stoics saw this trap clearly. Epictetus warned, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults,' or else he would not have mentioned only these." What does that mean? It means that truth is not proven in argument. It is proven in life. Slander screams, but silence, paired with integrity, whispers louder. When you refuse to fuel gossip with your reaction, when you remain steady in who you are and how you live, the rumor slowly dies of starvation. History shows this again and again. Great leaders maligned by enemies, philosophers accused of crimes they never committed. Yet those who endured in silence, letting their character speak for them, outlasted every lie. Of course, silence here is not easy. It requires immense strength to resist the urge to clear your name. But the Stoic path is not about easy. It's about enduring what is beyond your control. And other people's tongues? Always beyond your control. So the next time whispers circle around you, ask yourself, will answering feed the fire or extinguish it? More often than not, silence is the water. Because false rumors may scream, but a consistent life, lived with honor, answers softly. And that soft answer always lasts longer than the noise. Number 5. Grief demands silence, yet teaches strength. There are moments in life when words feel useless. When someone you love is gone, when tragedy arrives without warning, when the weight in your chest is too heavy for language. In those moments, silence becomes the only honest response. The Stoics understood grief not as weakness, but as proof of our humanity. Epictetus himself was once asked how to handle the death of a child. His answer was not to deny the pain, but to endure it, to sit with it, to allow the silence of mourning to do its slow, invisible work. Because grief has its own rhythm. Words cannot hurry it, explanations cannot soften it, and no clever phrase will erase the wound. But silence holds space for healing. It allows the inner voice to whisper truths too deep for speech. It lets tears fall without shame and slowly transforms pain into something more enduring: purpose. Marcus Aurelius, who buried many of his children, did not deny his sorrow, but he used silence to turn loss into perspective. He wrote to himself, "Do not act as if you will live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you." Grief reminded him to cherish each moment, to live with urgency, to let sorrow sharpen his strength rather than break it. This is the strange gift of silence in grief. It doesn't erase the ache, it doesn't replace what was lost, but it teaches you that suffering can be endured, and that endurance can be transformed into wisdom. So, when loss strikes, don't rush to cover it with words. Let silence do its work, because in that quiet space of mourning, your spirit begins its rebirth. Number 4, when faced with ignorance, respond with silence. Few things tempt us more than correcting ignorance. When someone speaks with arrogance, when they spread falsehoods with confidence, when they mock what they don't understand, our instinct is to answer, to prove them wrong, to defend truth. But here's the trap. Arguing with ignorance rarely creates wisdom. It usually creates more noise. The other person isn't listening. They're waiting to strike back. And in the process, your words get dragged into the mud with theirs. The Stoics warned against this endless cycle. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Silence in the face of ignorance is not surrender. It's protection. It preserves your dignity. It keeps you from being pulled down into pettiness. But silence alone isn't always enough. It needs a companion, discernment. Discernment is knowing when to stay silent and when silence itself might allow harm to spread unchecked. There are moments when a quiet withdrawal shows strength, and others when truth must be spoken clearly, but without anger, without ego. The Stoics weren't advocating passivity. They were teaching discipline. The discipline to resist meaningless battles. The wisdom to separate noise from necessity. Think of a philosopher in the marketplace, heckled, mocked, dismissed. If he responded to every insult, his teaching would never be heard. But by choosing his words sparingly, and only when they carried weight, his silence made his speech unforgettable. So the lesson is this: when ignorance confronts you, pause before you answer. Ask yourself, will words here create clarity or just more confusion? If the answer is confusion, let silence protect you. Because silence joined with discernment is not weakness. It is the shield of wisdom. And it ensures that when you do finally speak, your words will rise above the noise. Number 3, we choose battles by choosing when to speak. Most people believe power comes from the sharpness of their words, from the strength of their arguments, or the cleverness of their comebacks. But the Stoics remind us of a deeper truth. Power is not in the words themselves. It is in the choice of when to use them. Every argument, every conflict, every conversation is a kind of battlefield, and not every battlefield is worth stepping onto. The ego, however, hates this truth. It whispers, defend yourself, prove them wrong, show your strength. But the more we obey the ego, the more battles we enter that were never worth fighting. Silence is the discipline that quiets the ego. It creates the pause, the breath, the space where wisdom can decide, is this worth my words, or is this better left unanswered? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always have the option of not having an opinion." That is not indifference. It is strategy. It is the refusal to waste energy on battles that drain the soul and prove nothing. Think of a warrior who never unsheathes his sword unless it truly matters. The restraint itself creates respect, because when the blade finally moves, everyone knows it was necessary. The same is true with speech. When you speak rarely and with intention, your words cut sharper than those who never stop talking. But this requires courage. The courage to let small insults pass, to let petty debates go unanswered, to allow silence to win the battles unworthy of your voice. The real power lies not in always speaking, but in knowing that you don't have to, and in saving your voice for the moments that truly shape the outcome. So let silence guide your choices, because every word is a battle, and true wisdom is knowing which ones are worth fighting. Number 2, inner mastery begins in unmoved silence. The greatest battles are not fought with others. They are fought within ourselves. It's easy to stay calm when the world is calm. But when insult strikes, when provocation burns, when chaos surrounds you, that is when discipline is tested. And the first sign of mastery is silence. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of sovereignty. The silence that says, "You cannot move me. Your words have no power here." The Stoics knew this was the foundation of all strength. Epictetus taught that people do not disturb us. It is our judgments about them that disturb us. So if the judgment is within our control, then so too is the response. Remaining unmoved when provoked is not weakness. It is supreme control. It is the refusal to hand your emotions over to someone else's hands. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself in the midst of daily attacks, "When another blames you or hates you, or people voice similar criticisms, go to their souls and see what sort of people they are. You will realize there is no need to be racked with anxiety that they hold any particular opinion about you." In other words, why should the barking of dogs disturb your inner stillness? Why should noise from outside shatter the fortress within? True discipline begins in this unmoved silence. The discipline to breathe, to wait, to let provocation pass by like a storm that cannot touch the mountain. And from that stillness comes the highest form of power, sovereignty. The mastery of self, the refusal to be ruled by emotion, the unshakable calm that no insult can pierce. This is the silence of a ruler, not of others, but of oneself. And only when you master this silence can you command respect without saying a word. Number 1. This silence commands respect without a single word. At the apex of silence lies something rare, a presence so strong it speaks louder than words ever could. This is the silence of authority, the silence of identity, the silence that commands respect without a single word. Think about the people who have left the deepest mark on you. Were they the loudest in the room, or the ones whose stillness drew your eyes without effort? True power is not in constant speech. It is in the aura that silence creates. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, wrote to himself daily in silence. Epictetus, once a slave, taught thousands, not through endless speeches, but through a presence that could not be ignored. They knew that words may persuade for a moment, but presence transforms for a lifetime. This is the silence of self-mastery. When you no longer need to prove, when you no longer need to defend, when you no longer need to fill the air with noise just to feel seen. Instead, your very being, your discipline, your restraint, your calm, speaks for you. And here is the paradox. People respect most those who do not chase respect. They follow those who do not beg to be followed. They listen to the ones who do not demand to be heard. Because silence reveals what speech often hides, inner strength. But how do we reach this silence? Not by withdrawal, not by running from life, but by practicing daily restraint, by learning to pause before words, by letting anger pass before response, by allowing grief to shape us quietly, by choosing presence over noise. Each small act of silence builds the larger force of sovereignty, until one day you walk into a room and without saying a word, people feel it. Respect, authority, presence. This is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of transformation. The silence that commands respect, not through speech, but through the undeniable power of being.